Last time I didn't join with audio. I should not have joined with audio.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Representative Hatch. How are you?
I'm awesome. At least that's what Lynn says, but other than that, I'm fine. Good morning, Lynn. Being ignored.
I hope you have a good session. I'm gonna make myself invisible now.
You look much
Well-
better that way. Just look. Good morning, Lynn.
All right. Bill, I wasn't ignoring you. We had a little technical problem.
How are you this morning?
I'm good.
That's good. Always good to see you.
Scott, do we have any background echo? We good? I think I'm off.
She looks muted on the screen.
Yeah, I'm muted. Is that better?
Yep.
All right. It's 9:05. Apologize for the delay. Technology is always great, but we always have a few little glitches. We are here in room 202 in the LOB. I have a script that I am required by the executive order to read when we start the meeting. As chair of Division 1, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with House Rule 67 and the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. This is a public meeting pertaining to division or budget matters. Please note that there is no physical location for members of the public to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I'm confirming that all members of the committee and select legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom electronic meeting platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting by the Zoom platform or by telephone. All necessary access information has been made available on the House calendar and through the electronic calendar on the General Court website. The notice for this meeting complies with House rules and RSA 91-A. Anyone who has a problem accessing the meeting should email ledge_fiscal@ledge.state.nh.us. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. LBA staff are on the meeting assisting us. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be roll call votes. This requires a roll call to start the meeting. And I can tell you that I am here in room 202. To my left is Vice Chairman Tracy Emmerich, also here in room 202. To my right is Representative Robert Taberge in room 202. And next to him is Representative Jerry Griffin, also in room 202. I'd like to call Bill Hatch. Where are you, sir?
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'm at my home in Gorham and I'm in my basement and my bride is somewhere in the house.
Okay. Good morning, Mary Beth. We're doing the roll call. Representative Walls.
I am present and I am alone in this part of the house.
Excellent. This morning, the first agency we're going to hear from is the Employees Labor Relation Board. And with us, we have Doug Ingersoll. Doug, welcome to us. And can you tell us, because I haven't looked, what page your budget's on? Or do you want me to look that up? 328? But page 328, people who are watching at home, watching with
I'm
us.
glad you had that page reference. I have a different one on my version. I have 2059s.
Okay, welcome. I know I sent you some questions and this is really for you to tell us about your budget, what you have, and welcome to Division 1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Thank you for taking the time to review our budget and listen to my very brief presentation. My name is Doug Ingersoll. I'm the Executive Director and Legal Counsel for the Public Employee Labor Relations Board. I've held that position for 10 years. And prior to that, I was a staff attorney with the PELRB. PELRB, as you may know, is responsible for administering the state's public sector collective bargaining laws. We have 4 full-time employees, one other, including myself, one other staff attorney and 2 support staff. We are authorized to have a 9-member board. It's essentially a volunteer board. Members are appointed for staggered 6-year terms by governor and council. We currently have 6 members on the board, 2 management representatives, 2 labor representatives, and 2 chairs. So we have enough board members to put together a quorum to review cases as necessary and to make sure we can staff cases if a particular member has a conflict. I did answer the questionnaire. I've circulated it. Our answers were pretty straightforward, essentially negative in response to most of those. I'll circle back to that and answer any questions you might have about that. I also circulated a handout, which is just a little more detail about what we do, an organizational chart, a comparison of the fiscal year 22-23 governor's budget to 20 and 21, and a little more detail about our operations. So let me just give you my overview from a very high level. Essentially, we did work with the governor's office beginning in the summer. Obviously, it was a very challenging time, and I would say the governor's budget director was focused more on some of the larger departments. Obviously, our percentage of the overall general fund state budget is relatively minor, but we did have back and forth with the governor's budget director at the time. And I shared a lot of detail about our operations and what we do. And it was my formal position that we couldn't continue to operate as a functional board if there were any significant reductions to our general fund budget, any changes to our position funding. And ultimately, the governor's budget director agreed with that and essentially adopted the budget that we had submitted as part of the department budget phase. And the budget that has actually been submitted by the governor closely tracks what we originally worked on over the summer. In terms of comparison to prior years, I think overall for the biennium, there is an increase to general funds of approximately $35,000. That's attributable to an $11,000 increase scheduled in fiscal year 23 for class 10 personal services and class 60 benefits, a $10,000 increase in fiscal year 22 compared to authorized fiscal year 21. And fiscal year 23, 17,286 increase in class 60 benefits compared to fiscal year 21. It's been my experience that our class 60 benefits budget tends to be a little high. And I know it's a little bit of a moving target, but it's likely that the actual expenditures in that class will be lower. And so our overall increase for the biennium will probably be less than the $35,000 I mentioned. There are some other minor increases. So for example, we are coming up to the final year of a 5-year lease. So starting this fall, I will go through the RFP process, and we have a little extra money in our rents class line to address that anticipated rent increase if it materializes. And I think that's $1,861 per fiscal year. What else? Fiscal year 27 OIT. Not class 27, fiscal year 22. We are scheduled to replace a switch that we have in our IT closet. Currently, we're using a loaner provided by OIT. And unfortunately, the cost for the switch is $3,500. So for that reason, our class 27 budget is higher compared to fiscal year 21. But fiscal year 23, once that expense has been met, that number actually will be lower compared to the prior years. That's pretty much the high level view of the budget. I'm happy to answer any particular questions you may have on line items.
Representative Walls has a question.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm just trying to find out if the paperwork that our witnesses are referencing, if that was sent out electronically, because I
think that LBA is posting that as we go along. Mrs. Levinas has been without electricity much of the night and in the morning, although I see her that she has managed to get here. So Mr. Hoffman was working by himself for a while due to electrical problems.
Madam
But
Chair,
it looks like Nancy is back. So
That's
you'll be
great.
able to see that on the LBA website as before.
thank you. I was going to say our power went on at 10:30 and came back at 6 a.m. So I can relate.
Oh, boy.
Well, we have a generator, so I shouldn't complain, but I did notice that we were almost the only ones that had power.
Yeah, we have a generator as well. Okay, any questions? Yeah. Representative Emmerich moves to approve the budget. Representative Griffin seconds the motion. Representative Taberge, do you have a roll call sheet, my sir? Okay. Then on the motion of approving the budget, Representative Taberge, please call the roll. Yes. He's absent. Think you're muted.
I can't hear anything.
I didn't have it. I'm sorry, Representative. Representative Hatch, your vote.
Yay.
Mary Beth, your vote. Representative Waltz.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Motion passes 6-0-1 with Representative Leishman absent. Mr. Ingersoll, thank you for coming and spending the morning with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, I know Representative Leishman was planning on being there in person. I expect he'll be there soon.
Yeah, I imagine he is. He may have been without electricity as well.
Yeah, I saw in the news Peterborough was hit, so.
Yeah.
You have to live up where it's rough. We had power, well, I have a generator too, but we had power all night.
It's my understanding that HB2 was released to the governor by OLS yesterday for a last look at the bill, just as any of us, when we file a bill, gets the bill before it's released to the public. I am expecting that it will be released to us today. If so, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, we will be reviewing our sections of HB2 kind of in generality to give us a good overview. This is 167 pages. And some of the things that, if you've read HB2 already, because we have had the draft, we are the last, I think the Department of Energy starts something like section 84, 85, and runs through section 155. It's many pages. OPLC, who will be here on Thursday, is much the same. We've asked them to come prepared to talk to it. But I thought if we had any questions, it would be good to ask LBA our questions and give them a little chance before some of our agencies get here with the bigger ones. We will have at 9:30 the Department of Labor. So I'm going to ask Tracy to mute us. I'd ask all of you to mute yourselves. Mr. Hoffman, please.
Yes, I'm here.
and over 5,000 elevator inspections. The division is also proactive, training approximately 2,500 employers per year on employment law to assist businesses with compliance. 2020, of course, being an exception as the public health emergency forced cancellation of in-person training last spring. The division did develop and conduct remote electronic training and will continue to offer this service in the future to employers. Among other duties, the Worker Compensation Division collects first reports of injury from employers and insurance carriers in New Hampshire regarding roughly 30 to 40,000 workplace injuries per year, conducts over 1,500 formal hearings per year, and manages non-appropriated revolving trust fund collections and payments approaching $20 million per year, which is, if you looked at our budget in total, that's nearly double the size of the entire operating budget of the department. While the department's total appropriations are funded 100% by agency income, that revenue is derived through two distinct sources: the administration fund and the restricted fund. The administration fund is described in RSA 281A:59. It comes from a pro rata assessment of the department's annual budget for worker compensation related activities, and it's levied on the worker compensation insurance carriers and self-insured entities in the state. The restricted fund, on the other hand, is described in RSA 273(1)B, and it comes from the sum of all other fees, licenses, certificates, and civil penalties of the department. The balance remaining in the restricted fund is transferred to the general fund at the conclusion of each year after our non-worker comp operating costs are paid. So we are a general fund contributor. 2 years ago, the Labor Department documented and wrote a new cost allocation plan so that the burden on either of those funding sources, the administration fund or the restricted fund, can actually be traced to measurable statistics from our operation. We believe that we've continued to improve on that model in this new budget request. A number of expenses that were budgeted in each division have been centralized in the administration division, which is already funded by a statistical allocation method. We believe that this approach will do several things: facilitate business office functions, reduce duplicative purchasing by the divisions, and also generate additional dollars for our general fund contribution at the end of the year. The governor's office provided us an overall expense target of $9.5 million in year one. That represented a 10% decrease from our 2021 adjusted authorized. The adjusted year two target was also about $670,000 lower than our current operating budget. And we met both of those targets with our efficiency budget request. If you look at department-wide class lines, these reductions have impacted 4 classes most profoundly: salaries, benefits, DOIT transfers, and post-retirement benefits. In addition to our decision to add no new positions in 22 or 23, we have also defunded 18 out of our 92 full-time classified positions in order to make efficiency target. While this does remove significant staffing flexibility, the department has been operating for many years with a 20% vacancy rate, and we'll be able to operate, we believe, normally. DOIT staffing has also been reduced from 5 full-time direct staff to 2 full-time direct staff. 1 position has been restored in the governor's recommended budget, as were 1 full-time and 1 part-time DOIT staff. We are in the process of launching our new on-base document management system this spring and expect to realize some operational improvements as a result. What we need really in the new biennium, rather than deeper staffing, is operational flexibility, and have attempted to provide for this through better funding of some of the operational class lines. The governor has also included significant prioritized needs for technology funding, and this is to allow us to migrate off of what I'm told is the state's last remaining AS400 IBM mainframe. And before I conclude, one other note that we wanted to make, because we have a correction that we would like to ask for. The funding mix, the revenue mix in accounting unit 6,000 went astray somehow in the governor's recommended budget. If we could reduce 6,000 class 6 revenue by $48,537.
What page are you on, Ken?
Let's see. This would be 335.
Yep.
Okay. So if you see the agency income classes at the bottom, class 6 and class 9,
Yep.
those are what I'm referring to. So let's see. Yes, class 6 in year 1, we'd like to reduce that by 48,537, and then reduce the same class by 45,817 in year 2, and then increase accounting unit 6,000 class 9 by the same figures in each year. We believe that the state would benefit by roughly $100,000 over the biennium by having the correct fund mix in that accounting unit.
Have you submitted that to us in paper?
We have not.
Will you please?
Sure. Will
Thank
do.
you.
Absolutely. And that concludes my remarks, Representative Over. So I'm happy to
Can
take
you-
questions.
We have a draft copy of HB2 and you have quite a large section in there. Are you prepared to talk about that today, or do you want to come back?
No, we can talk about that. We know what we submitted to the governor's office. We haven't seen what was.
You haven't
what-
seen it. All right.
right.
Then I guess we'll have to have you come back. HB2 is my understanding was sent back to the governor's office sometime yesterday, which is normal procedure with all laws. The person who puts it in gets a chance to review it and before it becomes public. We are expecting it to become public. And although we have draft copies, since you haven't seen it, in fairness to you, we'll ask you to come back. I'll just schedule some time. I don't think it'll take a long time to go over it, but it did seem to be rather lengthy. So we would like your input on that.
Sure, happy to do it.
Tell me about the reduction in class 27. How did that get reduced?
Yeah, significant staffing reductions. I might have mentioned that there were 5 full-time positions budgeted in the DOIT budget, and we currently have 2 staff members. So those other 3 positions were reduced, but we did get 1 back in the governor's recommended as a prioritized need.
So you believe in that area, you came out okay, because I saw that you said all your prioritized needs were funded.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Are there-
I'm sorry, just to add to that, we had already determined that we were going to reduce the number of positions in DOIT that were embedded here as direct positions.
Okay. Questions from the division members? Representative Walls.
Yes. Commissioner Merrifield, if you were to be level funded with the prior biennium, how much more money would need to go to labor to be level funded?
If you're referring to level funding in the efficiency budget,
In the overall, in the entire budget, if Department of Labor were to receive the same amount of money it received in the prior budget, what's the difference? How much more would it be for it to be level funding between the 2 budgets?
I think my immediate guess is it's about $500,000. Let me see if I can determine that. So total governor budget, 10.1. Yep, it's just about $500,000.
Okay, I'm not talking from the governor's budget. I'm talking from the budget passed 2 years ago.
Right.
Okay, just making
Now,
sure
if-
it's clear.
Okay, and are you referring to efficiency budget then?
I'm referring to the budget that we're being asked to approve today in comparison with the budget we approved 2 years ago.
Absolutely. So that is the governor's recommended budget.
Okay,
Okay, so roughly forgive me, $500,000.
thank you.
Any additional questions for Mr. Merrifield? Seeing none, thank you for spending some time with us this morning. And when HB2 is released, we will schedule you to come back for a short amount of time to talk about your section in HB2.
Sure, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hoffman, we are again running ahead. We're going to be in recess for 10 minutes, so we are all going to mute ourselves and we'll be back at 10 o'clock. Hopefully there are no more electrical gremlins that show up.
We'll keep our fingers crossed.
We have with us the Agricultural Commissioner, Shawn Jasper. Mr. Jasper, do you have some handouts for us someplace?
I was not asked to provide anything.
Yeah, you got a letter from me that said, please provide handouts in hard copy and bring them with you, and also digitally so that the people at home can see it, because LBA is putting that up on the screen.
I'm afraid we didn't see that. As a matter of fact, I only learned that we were on today when I was going through the calendar last Friday. So I think there's been some,
Yeah,
Great.
Janet confirmed this with your office. I don't know who's doing that for you last week before it came up in the calendar.
yeah,
Okay, so your budget is on page 231. We will start and we will go through it line by line and we will ask some questions as we go along. So at the bottom of page 231, you start with your class 10, which is going down. Can you explain that to us?
what we have done in order to meet the governor's target is we have two funds, primarily the scale and product testing fund. And we have traditionally bought equipment, primarily cars, out of that. Our fleet's in good shape, and so we have shifted in that area. More personnel into that account and not purchasing vehicles. We may have one or two in there, but we've reduced that. Then the other fund that we have is,
So Commissioner, if I could.
yes,
Class 10 went down $4,400. And that's because you shifted a person out for part of a year?
I'm sorry, maybe Michelle should be on, and I don't know if she can be brought on. She-
Sure she can. If she's up here.
Yeah,
Michelle Thibodeau,
yes.
joining you now, sir.
All right, very good.
And there she is. So maybe she can answer that.
Michelle, did you hear the question about the class 10? It's down just $4,000 from that, and I don't have that detail in front of me.
Yes. Just one moment.
While she's looking for that, though, that primarily we have done a lot of shifting around, and we have that one change that we're asking for to RSA 43050 integrated pest management. And this is how we are managing our budget without doing any layoffs, is by using some of these funds.
Commissioner, maybe while she's looking, we can go to class 11. That went up, and I assume that is your salary. It went up from 109,474 to 114,391. And then it jumps again in 2023 to 122,336. Can you
That
talk
would-
about those increases?
Yeah, I mean, that would be primarily my salary. And because obviously commissioners are on a scale, and that probably brings me to the top of the scale in the final year.
Current expenses went up. I'm now on class 20 while Michelle works out class 10. I mean, that jumped fivefold. What's going on there?
I'm afraid, again, that level of detail is something Michelle has.
Michelle, do you know the answer to that one?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that one.
Class 20 increased from $2,900 to $10,395.
I have to apologize. I am looking at a different budget, so I'm not on the same pages as you. I apologize. I'm trying to pull it up through the computer system and it's not cooperating with me. Oh. My pages are marked differently from yours.
Yeah, we have the budget book, so we have you on page 231.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull that up right now. Most of our class 20 expenditures, though, we are trying to put more of it under the commissioner's budget and putting transfers from other agency. Our department would have just one class, trying to have one class 20 fund under the commissioner. And the commissioner would be the main account to pay those expenses.
I do see your AU 2133 division weights and measures dropped $7,900. So you think that was just a square transfer from, we can track that down with a
Yeah.
crosswalk?
We should be able to, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
It
that
looks
was,
like, I'm sorry, Shawn.
no, I apologize. It's difficult.
Nope,
Yeah,
no
that was
problem.
one of the things that I had intended to do in the last budget, and that did not happen. When I became commissioner and I started looking around, I found that we had supplies all over this place, and we had way too many things of some things, and it was just, I said, no, we have to stop this. We need to have all of our supplies centralized. We can't have everybody duplicating everything, because in some areas, I think we've
That
got-
makes sense. We just ask you
Yeah.
because sometimes we don't
Sure.
see the correlation, and
Yep.
we don't want to cut anything where you've had an actual strategy for bettering the running of your agency.
Yeah.
What about class 27? We are not used to seeing transfers to DOIT go down so dramatically. In fact, we're used to seeing them go up and nobody knows why. So to see them go down is wonderful.
Well, we replaced an awful lot of equipment this last year, and as part of the budget strategy, we looked at what did we really need to replace. And so we're taking, to some degree, a gamble that we don't need to be replacing all of these computers that were being recommended. So we worked with DOIT and really looked at what our actual needs were. And so this was really just, we're not replacing as much. Doesn't make a lot of sense to have new computers and not have any people to operate them. So we opted to take the gamble in that direction.
People are chuckling here. You can't hear that, but they're with you.
My computer is still not cooperating with me. I apologize.
Maybe that's one that we should have replaced, but
That may be the most important one. After all, she's doing your accounting. All right, I have switched over to page 233, and I'm in basically the division of weights and measures, because you see a lot of summarizations in there. Unemployment compensation, those kinds of things are workers' comp are given, figures given to you. You live with them. You don't schedule them. We see again, class 10 going up almost, not quite 100,000, but close to it, 90,000. Did you move people into division of weights and measures?
yeah, the way that had been set up, and it didn't make any sense to me, is the money in the product testing fund, a lot of weights and measures people were funded through there, but they aren't the people who bring in the income. So I realigned that so that we were funding positions in regulatory services with that instead of weights and measures. So weights and measures personnel were then funded through.
And you already mentioned you'd move some of your equipment, and this is class 30, and new equipment around to a more appropriate place. So we see that in this weights and measures budget as well.
Yes.
Representative Leishman has a question. He's going to turn on his microphone.
How are you, Shawn? Hope all is
I-
well.
I'm well, Representative. How are you?
Good, thanks. So on page 234, I see a substantial increase, about 175,000. And it looks like you're adding, what, 2 new people to the weights and measures group?
Well, no, that's the realignment. Actually, as I just said, I really never understood why we were funding weights and measures positions from the from the scale and product testing fund. So we're just, it came out, that we're using in total, I think, more money out of that fund, but that did increase weights and measures. It was just a realignment.
Okay,
There's
thank
no
you.
new positions in this budget at all.
Have you seen what the governor put in HB2 for you?
Have not.
Okay.
Hopefully the language for the integrated pest management is in there. We did request that and he'd agreed that. But beyond that, I haven't seen anything.
Okay, we do have a draft copy, so we have seen it. The status of HB2 is it went to the governor yesterday for final review. We're hoping it gets released to the public this afternoon because it is in March and we are working on the budget, so it's kind of late. We will probably have to ask you to come back for 10 or 15 minutes
Certainly.
to go over that. You do have a new fund in there. And of course, we see the language, but we never see the rationale behind it or the need or the business need or the strategy you've come up with to use that fund. Anybody
Sure.
else have questions for the commissioner? I know we're all awake, Commissioner. I can see eyes, but I see no questions. And I see heads
Madam
going,
Chair.
no. Representative Walsh, do you have a question?
I do.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
I don't mean to talk over you. I just have a question. If you were to be level funded from the prior biennium, how much more would you require to be level funded from the prior biennium?
When we're talking general fund dollars, which for us is, we're about 50-50. Our general fund dollars, the difference between 21 and 22 is $460,000. We would need additional funding. And for 23, it'd be $354,000.
And non-general fund dollars?
Well, when everything comes out in the wash, we're about just about $200,000 short in 22, but only $27,000 short in 23.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Any other questions for the commissioner? Commissioner, when Michelle's
Madam
computer,
Chair, I'm sorry, I'm trying to catch you.
okay, when Michelle's computer works, will you just zip over to, or have her zip over to Janet and understanding what happened in class 110? I don't want to leave you without enough money to pay for an existing employee. And when you see just a $4,000 difference, you start thinking, did we get enough money for the employee? Or maybe you have somebody who's vacant that you're going to hire after the year starts. I don't know, but we'd like to just double check that so that you are not left
Yeah.
in an awkward situation.
I can speak
Michelle's there.
a little bit to it too, as well. Currently, I was hired just this past year, and another employee was hired. So we were kind of at the low level of the pay scales. So that's why it drops. So the next pay scale, it'll go up a little bit each year. And we also do have a vacant position that we hopefully will be filling soon.
Okay, so Michelle, let me make sure I understand this, because again, my concern is making sure we have enough money to pay existing staff. And adjusted authorized 2021 we have 100,000 few dollars. And in recommended 2022, we have 96,000 and a couple of dollars. So you think it's because we've had 2 staff change and the pay scale's a little lower than the people in 21, so you have adequate coverage for the salaries?
I believe so, yes. I
Okay.
will definitely verify that
Please,
and get back with Janet.
please, we want to be sure everybody gets paid who's in the budget. Representative Hatch, you have your hand up, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just when the commissioner comes back, you addressed one concern I have. The other one is will he be bringing back a summary of the questions you asked on each budget, all departments, just?
Well, he basically told us he's added no new full-time staff, no part-time staff. He has moved people around. How many positions were eliminated? Shawn, I didn't hear you say you
Yeah, no,
eliminated, but you reorganized.
No, he had just barely gotten back up to full staffing. I think we still had one vacancy in pesticides. It's a federally funded position. But for the first time in anybody's memory, we were finally back up to full staffing when this hit. So,
Good, okay, thank you.
One of the questions we ask is your agency adequately staffed to complete all work assigned to your agency in state law? And the reason we ask that is because if you get a performance review and we have failed to staff you appropriately, you should not get a ding on your ability to perform because the legislature was unable to provide you what you need.
we are not able to do everything that we're tasked with doing. Probably the 2 divisions that are best able to perform all their tasks are probably pesticides, which of course is extremely important to make sure that we are adequately regulating the use of pesticides in the state. And plant industry is, I think, able to keep up with the work that they have and regulate those things. Of course, you know, a big problem in this state is invasive species of plants and insects, and certainly plants are getting out of control when you look at the bittersweet and you look at the multiflora rose and the knotweed and many things like that. But, you know, we're not able to be as aggressive there. Where we're not doing as good a job, weights and measures, and we'll hopefully get back up to full staffing. We need to do more auditing in that area. You know, we're keeping up with the licensure and working hard there, but do we get out there and check the work that other people are doing as much as we should? No. Regulatory services, again, we're keeping up with the licensure and the registration of products, but we're supposed to be actually doing an analysis of many of those products. We're not able to do that with the staff and never have been. We're much better off than we were. Animal industry is the area that we're in the worst shape, really, and that has a lot to do with pet vending. Last year when laws were changed, I made it very clear we would be in complete failure in that area. My staff is working extremely hard to do the best they can. But, you know, we said we needed at least 4 people to do what was being asked. We were given 1. That's why we're trying to get the database. And within that request, which is a separate bill, there is an IT person for that. In my office particularly, I mean, there are really 3.5 of us. And there really should be a real deputy commissioner here. We can't move forward with a lot of the things that we should be. That was something that I was hoping to request this year, but obviously with the pandemic and everything else, I chose not to. But
so the corollary to that question is, if we cannot add the adequate staffing, should we consider suspending a law for the biennium because you are not staffed to do it?
I would say no. But because they're so correlated, we're doing many of the things. There's not a specific thing that I could say, take this away and it'll alleviate it. They're intertwined, and there are just parts of things that we're not able to get done in some of those areas.
Okay, so this was a question from Vice Chairman Emmerich. What things are you doing that are found in state law that could be eliminated and why, if any?
In terms of the things we're charged with doing, I don't think there's anything that we are doing that should be eliminated that has a budgetary impact. I think they're all important things, and I think we just need to continue to work to see how we can get to that level of performance where we can do everything the legislature has asked us to do. But when I took over, former Commissioner Merrill referred to what we do as triage. To some degree, some areas that's still true. I think we are in less triage mode than we used to be, except for animal industry and particularly with the pet vending. That's a very, very difficult situation. And frankly, we're dealing with some very, very difficult people. And so that's going to continue to be a real problem. But
Okay, we have two more questions. One of them was discussing the HB2 sections. Obviously, we already talked about, we'll have you back to look at that fund you have in there. That will be, I don't know, 5 or 10 minute discussion. We'll probably put together a roundtable and have several commissioners with short sections come be able to answer questions for us. And then the other one was, what priorities did you have that were not funded? What's the cost, the description, the impact of not funding? I think you've spoken already to the assistant commissioner situation. What else did you have?
well, the governor did approve all of our prioritized needs, and we went with a very lean ask, if you will. And so, the governor did address all of those, and I didn't ask for some other things that I would have liked to, because I recognize the difficulty that we're going to have in this budget cycle. The one big ask that he did agree to, we had funded in the last biennium $750,000 for ag land development, which can be matched by federal funds. Obviously, we weren't able to spend any of that. We've asked, and he has agreed for $250,000 in the second biennium, which will bring us $250,000 of federal funds. So that was our one big ask that is there. The others are relatively small, like $4,000 a year increases for ag in the classroom and the FFA programs and some other minor things. But we didn't ask for a lot, and the governor thankfully did give us what we asked for in our prioritized needs.
Okay, so that runs through Representative Hatch's question. Representative Leishman, you have a question?
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Is your microphone on? Yes.
It
okay.
is. So on page 271, or our page 271, the other funds you received in the actual funds in 2020 were $1.4 million. And in the governor's recommended budget, you're looking to receive $2.6 million, so about a $1.2 million increase. Where are those other funds coming from? And are you including any new fees or increasing fees this year? Thanks.
No, and I'm not, my numbers aren't quite lining up. What I'm looking at it in 21 was other funds of just over 2 million, and then 2.6. Some of that is I think a better estimate of what those other funds for. Those are all of our other fees and funds combined. So the money that comes in that we keep for the scale and product testing fund, that's a fund that 50% goes to the state. We keep 50%. Then we have the pet population control. That money all goes out for spay and neutering. We have the pesticides, the integrated pesticide fund. That's 75% goes to the state, 25% comes there. And then all of our other licensing through through the divisions. That's our total. So I think some of this may have been, we've done a better job of estimating, and of course things are going up. And as we have more staff, we've actually been able to find a lot more people who should have been registered and licensed in various areas. That's a huge problem when you're understaffed. There's a lot of people who just simply are not complying voluntarily with the law, and we have to find them. A lot of products out there that are being sold, and particularly in the area of pet food, a lot now is being sold over the internet, and we're trying to figure out how to deal with that. That's something that everybody's dealing with in every state. But
All right, thanks, Madam Chair.
Representative TaBerge.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here, Commissioner. I have a question. There seems to be an overlap, or at least I need clarification, between what your department is doing and the university system and extension. Is there any type of correlation or cooperation or collaboration?
well, there is an awful lot, and we have an awful. Say awful. Awful's a terrible word to use for this, but there is a lot of cooperation. I refer to UNH Cooperative Extension really as our sister organization. We're the regulatory branch, they're the educational branch. And of course, that goes hand in hand. So there are contracts that we have with Cooperative Extension, and we work very, very closely with them. But there's nothing that we do that they also do, and there's nothing that we do that they also do. So it's really a glove in hand situation.
Okay, thank you.
I think you've answered all of our questions.
All right.
Thank you for doing that. And I thank Michelle for looking up those answers to some of those little questions to make sure we have things done correctly. And Commissioner, when we get down to HB2, we'll probably ask you to come back to talk about that new non-lapsing fund that is proposed and the purpose and what it's going to bring to us.
All
Do you have
right,
any
David.
questions for us?
No, I apologize for the breakdown in communications. I don't.
Hey, it
don't
worked
know-
out.
Well, good.
It worked out. We got
Very good.
everything done.
Excellent.
Thank you for
very much.
coming.
You're welcome. Take care.
Okay. You have both of them.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Welcome to Division 1. What page is the budget on? Has somebody looked that up? Okay, we're on budget book page 186 for people in the audience who have a budget book.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I didn't get that page number. Can you please repeat it?
186.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Lindsay, we'd like to turn it over to you and let you get started talking to us about your agency, your work, and your budget.
Excellent, thank you. Well, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the division. For the record, I'm Lindsey Courtney, the Executive Director of the Office of Professional Licensure and Certification. With me is OPLC's Business Administrator, Jason Richard, as well as Joseph Shoemaker, our Division Director. I apologize for not being able to be there physically with you today, but we're all here to be able to answer questions as needed. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today regarding the governor's recommended budget for the office. So you'll see in your presentation materials, basically some overview of the state agency. And I just wanted to highlight this because I think it really sets the stage for some of our budget requests as reflected in the governor's recommended budget. So as you know, PLC is the state agency responsible for administering 54 boards, councils, and commissions in the state of New Hampshire, as well as currently the Prescription Drug Monitoring Program, or PDMP. It is a new agency, and it is certainly a small agency with only 64 permanent classified positions at present. However, the impact on the state of New Hampshire is vast. In fiscal year 20 alone, OPLC had 223,000 occupational licenses that were active in New Hampshire under the agency. And this figure represents a 29% increase from FY19 alone. It suffices to say that every person in the state of New Hampshire has interacted with this agency or one of its licensees. It's important to note, I think, for purposes of the budget, of course, that OPLC is a self-funded agency. Its funding is restricted and must only be used toward the cost of licensing and enforcing the occupational licensing regulations under the Practice Acts. So we're all aware that the purpose of the boards under OPLC is to protect the public. And obviously the general court has concluded that we need to ensure that an individual meets minimum standards necessary to practice a particular profession. And we do that through occupational licensing. So when we think of it that way, occupational licensing is by its very nature, a purposeful barrier to workforce. And therefore it does play a vital role in workforce and impact in workforce on our community. So what is the agency's purpose relative to the boards? I would say that OPLC's purpose is a little bit different. Our purpose is set forth in the statute 310A, and it's really to promote efficiency and economy in the administration of these licensing boards. So our objective is to assist the boards in protecting the public, while at the same time ensuring that licensing is efficient so as to reduce unnecessary workforce barriers. And from my perspective, the two major barriers to workforce entry in this state as it pertains to licensing are the time it takes to obtain a license and the time it takes for someone to re-enter the workforce after a complaint has been filed.
Representative Walls has a question for you. Would you take it?
Absolutely.
You're muted. Mary Beth, you're mute. You're muted.
I got it. I took a minute. My question, Madam Chair, simply is, there's no documents either on the LBA website or in our email on this, and I'm wondering if the documents are available to those of us remote.
It's the same answer as I gave you earlier. Mr. Hoffman is here alone. He's working as fast as he can. Mrs. Levinas had an electric problem, and so they will come up.
Thank you. That's fair answer. I just didn't know if I was missing something. Thank you.
Please continue.
Thank you.
Lindsay.
So through the governor's recommended FY22 and 23 budget, the agency will strive to eliminate unnecessary workforce barriers by accomplishing two things: significantly reducing the time frame for licensure and significantly reducing the time frame for investigations. I do want to highlight some of the things that OPLC is currently working toward that really falls into place with some of our budget requests for FY22 and 23. We've been actively working to achieve those two goals by using our existing resources, but of course we need some additional assistance with funding. One of our top projects has been our agency reorganization, and you'll see that that's reflected in the governor's recommended budget.
Yes, that's in HB2 as well. So we do all have a draft copy of HB2, so we've been able to read that. So we are going to want to walk through that reorganization to understand it.
Absolutely. From a historical background, when OPLC was created, the boards and the board staff were essentially just plopped into a structure that really resembled what the structure had been for the various boards that came over to OPLC. Their staffing remained the same, their policies remained the same, the procedures remained the same, everything remained the same, except for their location. Obviously, that's my perspective. And I think for several years, they operated essentially in the same manner as they did prior to OPLC's creation. About a year ago, we started on this project to really do a deeper dive to make sure that we're meeting our statutory mission. And one of the things that we observed was that agency structure was a barrier to achieving efficiencies. Many of our staff were doing the same tasks in many different ways. In other words, you had 54 different ways of handling a complaint. You also had multiple people touching complaints. You had 54 different ways of processing a license. And so we started to develop a project to reorganize the agency into 2 divisions based on job function. Again, there are 2 primary purposes of our agency, which is to license individuals and to conduct investigations. And so we wanted to allocate our staff based on those two primary functions. So we have started to move forward with this through our physical relocation to 7 Eagle Square, which was not anticipated, as I think you're aware. And so we started to move staff into these functional areas, but the budget obviously is going to formalize that process. So in July of 2020, we began reorganizing staff based on job function in lieu of subject matter boards. And this has allowed us to really take a deep look at what our procedures and our policies and our rules are regarding these 2 primary functions, so that we can be efficient, we can have one way of doing business instead of 54. We've also centralized our mail intake to make sure that we're handling mail and also monies the same way through our finance office instead of through our license clerks. That was completed in December of 2020. We are centralizing our customer service. Instead of individual license clerks fielding various questions, we've created or are creating a customer service group. The go live date for that is mid-March of 2021. And we're working on adopting the same policies and procedures for all boards concerning investigations and licensing. We've also embarked on a mission to leverage technology where appropriate. So previously, we have always had the My License Office enterprise solution. I think that dates back many years. But it was essentially a first come, first serve. Whichever staff member wanted to go online, they contacted the 2 UIT people who are dedicated to this project, and they got in line, regardless of the impact on the state or workforce. So we've taken that on, and we've developed a project plan, and all licensing renewals will be online by March 15th of this year. All licensing initial applications should be online by the end of FY22. We've completely redesigned our website. That website goes live on Thursday. I'm very excited about that. And we're working on scanning in all of our documentation that was really necessitated by the move from Philbrook, so that we can move all of our documentation online and streamline the processes. So that's what we've been doing, and it really—
Can I ask you a question about this?
Of course.
Many of the licenses require on-the-job training or regular training classes or whatever. I know real estate licenses, they have to complete so many courses. Are they going to be able now to submit that electronically?
Yes. We
Oh,
don't
that
want
will
to—
be wonderful.
Yes, we don't want to have any paper in the office because it really increases the amount of time to have to manually process that information. In addition, we don't have any storage space.
Yeah.
We've decreased our square footage significantly. So OPLC, through the governor's recommended budget, proposes to continue to maximize efficiencies in agency operations by accomplishing several things. Formally reorganizing the agency to divide staff based on job function, as I noted. Significantly reducing OPLC's part-time class 50 budget and utilizing those funds to assist in establishing full-time positions. Historically, OPLC's workforce, about 20% has been part-time, and that's really been a barrier for efficiencies. It's difficult to find part-time workers. Oftentimes people utilize part-time positions as a stepping stone to full-time employment elsewhere. And so we're constantly retraining, and it's just really not efficient or productive. And then we'd also like to establish OPLC as a 125% agency. We have eliminated our double accounting method to increase transparency in our finances. And we've moved all expenses to administration, you'll see in this budget, mainly because with the reorganization, it's unclear where the expenses will kind of fall between the 2 divisions because we don't have that historical data. Finally, technology, you'll see class 27 has some, fairly large increases, but our position is that we need to make initial investments in technology to greatly increase efficiencies in licensing and disciplinary actions and reduce workforce barriers. And as an aside, I'll give you a tidbit of information. With Emergency Order 15, the agency had to act really quickly in order to adopt an emergency licensing process. And we were really anticipating that our physicians and our nurses would be the ones applying for these emergency licenses to assist with COVID-19. What we observed was that the very large majority of those initially applying for emergency licenses were actually mental health providers, many of whom live in New Hampshire but work elsewhere. And when you talk to these providers, they do not, a lot of them don't work in New Hampshire, mainly because they were able to obtain employment in other states, border states, more quickly, because we know Vermont, for example, will turn around license times in 24 hours, and Massachusetts is also beating us in that. So there's really a need for us to, on a workforce, and for us to reduce our time frames. So to accomplish all of our objectives, OPLC proposes through the governor's recommended budget to increase its fiscal year 22-23 budget, mainly in several categories. Class 10, obviously, that includes 11 new positions, not including the Mechanical Licensing Board, which is also slated to come over to OPLC. Class 20, that really you'll see is a $200,000 increase, but it's mainly for credit card processing fees. As we move everything online, we will be taking in more credit card payments, obviously, and that 2.3% fee, that is the average of credit card fees, will eat up those costs. Our class 22 move to Eagle Square, obviously our increase in rent, and then our class 27 are tech projects.
Where were you before you moved?
We were at Philbrook.
Right. You're one of the Philbrook people, dispossessed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a fun time.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So I did want to highlight two key components regarding the governor's proposed budget. And I know that Commissioner Goulet is presenting on class 27, but class 27 is a key component of OPLC's budget and how it's going to basically move the agency forward in achieving efficiencies. So in January 2020, OPLC and DOIT sought and obtained GNC approval to establish an IT manager and a business analyst position within DOIT to be embedded in the agency, and to permit OPLC to accept and expend funds for these positions. We were able to hire this past fall, and I'll say that this has been a total game changer for the agency. All of the projects that I just mentioned in terms of redesigning the website, redesigning a COVID microsite, bringing all renewals online and bringing all licensing online, all of that is through the work of these two positions and Commissioner Goulet's incredible support with his agency. And in order for us to continue our projects, we certainly need to continue to fund these positions. We also have some additional prioritized needs that were included in the governor's recommended budget. We have the $400,000 initial fee for the investigations and inspection software. Right now, all of our investigations are done manually with a paper process. Same thing with our inspections. Our pharmacists will go out with the paper sheets, as well as our cosmetologists, and draft up inspections, and then we have to manually upload them into our system. It's really inefficient. And also, it's not transparent for the public. We'd like to be able to post those online. We are in dire need of a document management system. With our move to 7 Eagle Square, we lost a significant amount of square footage. And by virtue of the fact that we do not have an agency-wide retention policy, something that we're trying to fix with Senate Bill 58, we essentially have to retain all these paper documents. So we've been scanning them in, and working with archives we are able to get rid of our paper documents, but we need an actual way to store the documents so that they're retrievable, and document management will be a key part of that.
So are you shipping your paper documents to archives? You said working with archives?
So archives approved our policy that allows us to retain documents in electronic form and to get rid of the paper documents.
Okay.
That satisfies their retention, but we have not actually destroyed any paper documents because we want to make sure that we're consistent with our naming conventions and have an actual streamlined approach to storage at this point so that they're retrievable.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So in terms of class 10, one of the questions that the division asked was what new positions are contemplated in the governor's proposed budget? So within the efficiency budget, we had again requested to significantly decrease our class 50 budget and increase our class 10 budget. In the efficiency budget, we've requested 6 positions to include 2 hearings examiners, an administrator 3, a program assistant or 2 program assistant 2s, and an investigative paralegal. Additional prioritized needs includes 5 positions, an administrator 3, 2 program assistant 2s, an investigative paralegal, and program specialist 4. The governor's proposed budget also contemplates transferring 7 existing positions from the Department of Safety to OPLC and transferring 6 positions from OPLC to the Department of Health and Human Services for the prescription drug monitoring program.
Can we talk about the safety transfer? That's in HB2, so we've all had an opportunity to read that. You're acquiring a new board, basically, aren't you?
Yes,
And how was that funded in safety?
it's funded through license fees with the Mechanical Licensing Board.
So they're not spending fewer general fund dollars, for example, because these are transferred to you. Is that correct?
Correct.
And in your area, they will be funded by the same license fees, yes?
Yes, correct.
And they had 7 and you're taking all 7?
They had 9. And in discussions with the fire marshal, apparently 2 of those positions were doing work essentially unrelated to the inspections or the licensing for the mechanical board. I think they also do some fireworks licensing, tobacco, some other things, and they needed to retain those 2. And so the positions that are coming over are 6 inspectors and a program assistant 2.
And what are you sending to HHS? You're sending the PDMP.
Yes. And its staff.
Did you have 6 staff with that?
So we have, let's see, we have the program administrator 1. That's a full-time permanent classified employee. Then there's, she has 2 permanent classified employees. And then she recently obtained approval for 3 9Ts that are funded directly by the CDC grant. We're a subgrantee of HHS. So those are temporary positions.
She got some general funds last biennium, didn't she?
It's actually agency funds. I think she previously received general funds, but the agency has paid for Mark's position.
And how will are you transferring funds to HHS?
We're not transferring funds at the moment to HHS. We do have statutory authority to send over licensing fees to support HHS. The PDMP, with the exception of 1 position, is completely funded through grants at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So in terms of whether our agency is adequately staffed to complete all work assigned under state law, I would say yes, under the governor's proposed recommended budget. Without the additional personnel and IT support contemplated, there will be backlogs of licensing leading to workforce barriers and reduced workforce availability in the state. As I explained earlier, Vermont is really beating us in terms of healthcare workforce, being able to turn over licenses quickly. We've alleviated some of that by granting the agency instead of the boards the ability to issue temporary licenses, and we are doing that in 24 business hours or less, which has definitely helped. But in order to really be competitive in workforce, we need additional staff to support our licensing and investigative efforts. I would say that OPLC historically has not been sufficiently staffed. Much of our workforce is part-time, so we have that constant churning of positions. We also only have 17 licensed clerks to manage nearly 230,000 active licensees. As an example, when the emergency licensing process was created, I I personally spent the better part of 2 weeks manually licensing people until about midnight at my kitchen table. We just didn't have anybody to do it. The average board administrator has at least 5 boards to administer, and the boards traditionally meet monthly. And prior to some reclassifications that we did for personnel this fiscal year, we did not even have one attorney prosecutor in the building. Cases were not being prosecuted or investigated. When we moved over to Eagle Square, and as part of our reorganization project, we found many cases that needed to be investigated, and we are pretty much done through the backlog. But without additional resources, it's going to, we're not going to be able to keep up. What things are we doing in state law that could be eliminated? I would say I have a laundry list of
Please
modifications.
suspend speaking for a moment. We've had an electrical glitch.
Okay.
While we get Scott in here. Okay, we're going to be in recess. We've had an electrical glitch. Give us 5 minutes to get Scott in here to take care of this. Where the high wind, the electricity is going on and off. So right now, no one outside can hear. No one in this room can hear. The only reason you can hear me is I have my Surface Pro here, so I'm hooked up to the network separately. So bear with us while we get him in here. He's
Take your
here
time.
already working.
Madam Chair, I can hear just fine.
The public is back listening. Lindsay, I appreciate your willingness to suspend when you're on a roll, but we are functioning again. So let's continue.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So in terms of the things that could be eliminated that we're presently doing, rather than list them all, I attached our copy of my testimony in support of the OPLC's 3 major bills. There's a lot of cleanup that needs to take place among the practice acts in order to basically allow us to move forward with our efficiencies, one of which is Senate Bill 13. That clarifies that OPLC has the authority to adopt fees for all boards, councils, and commissions. Presently, boards have retained that authority and a lot of the practice acts, and so we're kind of at a standstill in being able to make any modifications regarding fees. There are other things that we're doing in state law or that we are required to be doing in state law that really is inefficient. One being that requiring a court stenographer to be present for all hearings. We record all hearings and it's later transcribed, but a steno is really not necessary. And then, removing requirements that we provide a roster of licensees for a fee. Obviously, rosters are required to be produced under 91A, accepting private information. And so that additional requirement that we keep on a separate roster on file does not make sense. And there are certain reporting requirements that we have under 332G for Title 30 boards that don't fall within our agency. So there are some things that need to be done, and that's in Senate Bill 58. And then finally in Senate Bill, 133, this makes some changes in terms of, hold on one moment. Yes, this makes some changes regarding our investigations and our rulemaking authority regarding investigations, which needs to be clarified versus the board's rulemaking authority over investigations. And so that's reflected in Senate Bill 133. I'm happy at this point to go through some line items, or I'm happy to just answer questions. What do you think would be most helpful, Madam Chair?
Representative Leishman has his hands up to ask a question.
So I believe it's on roughly page 9 of the first handout you gave us. And you asked for at least 11 new positions and of course the transfer of 7. So do you have a cost of those new positions, the 11 plus? Will there be any revenue generated from those positions? I would assume perhaps some additional revenue through enforcement or other actions. Do you have anything that you could give us on that?
Yes, so we can add up the cost for you. I think it's roughly, the cost is set forth in the letter in terms of salary and benefits, the full cost of each position. We do have existing revenue. So OPLC at present is taking in, I think this year we're anticipated to take in about $13 million. Next year, I'm projecting about $14 million. That's pretty conservative with the addition of the Mechanical Licensing Board and the fact that the number of licenses have continued to increase. So we are certainly able to fund these additional positions, particularly given the fact that our Class 50 budget is anticipated to decrease about $400,000. And so this would just mean, obviously, that the lapse to the general fund is less than what it presently is, but we are able to fund that.
Do you have a follow-up? Are there other questions at this moment? Representative Hatch, is that your hand up?
That is, Madam Chair, thank you. Yeah, just we started a conversation about your attorney classes, and we added an additional one to help with rules. And I was just wondering if that was adequate. There still seems to be some improvement needed, and if you could just speak to that, or do you have an additional need, or what's going on there, if you may?
Yeah, I would say we still have a backlog. We're trying to work our way through the backlog. As you know, OPLC does about 20% of the state's rulemaking. And prior to you adding on that additional position, we had one attorney who provides all of our general legal counsel to the agency, the 54 boards, councils, and commissions, does all the rulemaking, and now is our legislative liaison. So it's a lot of work, obviously, and it has created a backlog. Unfortunately, we were kind of in a catch-22 in terms of what to do with that additional attorney position without having a prosecutor in-house. We were not able to prosecute or investigate a lot of cases. And so in terms of meeting our statutory obligations, I made the decision that I thought that a backlog on rules was a little bit better than having no prosecutions or investigations. So we reclassified that additional attorney position to an administrative prosecutor position so that we can at least prosecute cases. We also reclassified another position, though, to add on a program specialist 4 position to assist Tom Broderick with rulemaking. And he and Tina Kelly are working through the backlog as quickly as they can. And she's great at being able to provide that rulemaking support. I think what's lacking, though, is an attorney to be able to provide that legal support to the boards that obviously Tina's not able to provide.
So if I may, Madam Chair, just to explore this, I'm not sure I'm not hearing that there's not a need for another position. Just to point out that rulemaking may seem less important than hearings, but understand you had a plethora of rules expired, and you know what happens when they're expired, they're not enforceable. And it could be a very serious problem for the state, as well as the licensing board ad infinitum. So is there still a need for another position? Because that concern certainly needs to be addressed. It really does. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I agree with you, Representative Hatch. And what we had recommended in the agency submission is in lieu, we recommended 1 hearings examiner position and 1 attorney position. And the governor's recommended budget contains no attorney positions and 2 hearings examiner positions. Our recommendation, obviously, we support the governor's recommended budget, but from an agency need, we certainly do need another attorney position, because I agree with your assessment. Rules are very important.
Lindsay, could we turn to page 195? And since you've done such a massive reorganization, which I understand why you've done it, and I applaud you for bringing more efficiency. Page 195 in the budget does present a summary of your agency. So without trying to look at accounting unit to accounting unit, why is this 0? Why is that down? Why don't we look at this summary, and why don't you walk us through, starting with federal funds, all the way down through the total number of positions, and talk to us about this page.
Absolutely. Let me just pull up so I make sure that I'm looking at the right, because I was working off of our condensed agency budget. Hold on. 195. I'm not sure I'm on the right page. Jason, do you know which version I should be looking at? Of the budget book?
It would be the last page of the governor's recommended budget.
That
has
is
the-
correct.
And that was page 195?
In our budget books, Lindsay, and we have the printed budget books, so we have one version. I know you guys have gone through several iterations with the governor.
Yes.
We just have what came out.
Okay.
So I gave you our page number because that's what we have.
So I have at the top, I have, the administration, class 10. That's what I'm looking at. Is that what you're looking at?
No, the last page starts with 01 general government, expenditure total for general government, federal fund funding, general funds, other funds. Then we get down to net total funds, number of positions, permanent classified, unclassified, total number of positions.
Okay,
The actual very summary page.
got it. I apologize.
No problem.
So much.
We're
paper.
glad we haven't gone through 3 or 4 iterations of the budget. So
Yeah, it's been fun. Oh, here we go. Professional licensure. Jason, do you have it up?
he's muted.
Yeah,
Madam-
yeah, let me pull it up and I'll email you a copy.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right document.
Or Jason can run us through it. I don't care. Since there's been such a difference in your agency with all the reorg.
Absolutely.
Madam Chairman, while we're waiting, may I ask a question?
Yes,
So I'm trying to understand, Lindsay, do you receive general funds or are you fully self-funded?
We are fully self-funded. We do not receive any general funds.
So to that end, in your presentation, which I eventually found, you mentioned that it's going to cause delays. I think it's on page 10 of your presentation. Delays if you don't have more staff. It sounds like you need legal staff and IT staff. And so if we were to give you the funding for that staff out of your own revenues, how much would you need?
I think it amounts to, well, hold on. I have it right here. So not accounting for PD&P and not accounting for mechanical licensing, we would in fiscal year 22, $11.9 million. In fiscal year 23, $12.2 million. If we added in the appropriations for mechanical licensing, those class 10 and class 60, I believe, we'd need 12.6 in fiscal year 22 and 12.9 in fiscal year 2023. And again, I'm still projecting, just based on our current fees, a projected revenue of about $14 million.
and we have that on page 194 for people who are trying to follow us at home.
So if I may follow up with those numbers, what's the difference between those numbers and the amount of money you're actually getting? Are you saying it's like 12.6 additional money and 12.9 additional money?
No, It ends up being it ends up being about a difference of $1.5 million in fiscal year 2022 and about $1.7 million in fiscal year 2023 compared to the adjusted authorization for fiscal year 2021. So to put it this way, so we lapsed, last year we lapsed about $3.2 million to the general fund. Our lapse target this year is 3.6. So that would effectively reduce our lapse by $1.5 million or $1.7 million across, each fiscal year in 22 and 23.
Thank you.
So I have it up here.
So Lindsay, you had a net increase of 18 people. You lost PD&P, you gained, you reorganized, and you added some new people, correct?
Correct. Oh, of course, that being said, we are reducing our class 50. So right now we actually have more bodies in the building than the 66 that are reflected in terms of.
Absolutely. Class 50 doesn't show in
right.
because they're part-time in the
Right.
permanent ones. So I was looking at your permanent new full-time positions with the loss, with the transfer out of safety, which is in HB2, you went up 18.
18.
And DAS, who does the budgets for us, does not total up the number of part-time people.
Right. Right.
How many new part-time people did you have?
How many new? We don't have any new part-time positions. We would have to, we will have to effectively eliminate positions. I think right now, Joe, how many do you think we have? I think we have about 13 to 15 part-time positions at the moment. At any given time, it's about 20%.
Yeah, correct. I think last time I looked, it was 15, and it's always been approximately 20%.
And what do they do for you?
They fill major functions. So right now, our administrator 3, who's in charge of all of licensing, is part-time. He's retiring in June, and one of the positions that we've suggested be created as an administrator 3, so that we can have a full-time supervisor overseeing licensing. We have 1 part-time investigator, and then we have a number of part-time license clerks and board admins.
Last biennium, there was a performance audit of the real estate board that had significant number of findings that needed to be addressed. As part of your reorg, how are you handling some of those deficiencies? And did the mix of staff you got in this budget handle those deficiencies?
I see that, so let me pull up the actual notes from the findings because I don't want to speak out of turn. I would say that the personnel that have been proposed are intended to address issues that have been longstanding in the agency regarding performance. Here's the naturopaths. So, so we had several recommendations to the agency regarding the real estate audit. One was improve supervision over licensing activities. The recommendation to OPLC is to update and formalize licensing policies and procedures. We're presently doing that right now, is updating all policies and procedures. Through our reorganization, we're trying to standardize policies and procedures regarding how we but certainly having an administrator in a full-time position overseeing all of that is going to help, meet our requirements, our performance requirements under the audit.
So this budget has that administrator and will help you in that area.
Correct. Recommendations for improving fiscal management. The recommendation related to OPLC was to improve fiscal management responsibilities by developing a cost allocation method more reflective of the cost to operate each board. I would tell you that the cost allocation method that OPLC has historically used is one based on revenue. That's not obviously the best way to be doing that. We're moving to a cost allocation method based on the number of licensees. As we consolidate and as we move forward with our reorganization, the shared costs are going up and the direct costs that are attributable to each board are going significantly down. So sharing those shared costs based on the number of licensee, I think is going to be a more accurate reflection of the actual cost to each individual licensee and board. Review administrative rules with the support of OPLC, improve its rules and adoption of rules. I think this goes back to our conversation earlier with Representative Hatch. Obviously, OPLC had requested an additional attorney that I think would assist with rulemaking support. I think certainly that additional position in lieu of one of our hearing examiners positions would assist with that. The observation to improve records management, develop procedures to implement policies and facilitate the development of records management program. This goes to our class 27 request, specifically a document management system so that records are easily, retained and are easily retrievable in accordance with a retention policy. We also have Senate Bill 58, I believe, would grant OPLC the authority to adopt a retention policy across the agency. One of the issues that we run into is the fact that all of these boards have varying retention policies or not at all. So then we fall back on the state's regular retention policy. Makes it very difficult for us to actually manage files and keep track of what files can be destroyed and must be destroyed and which files must be retained. And one of the things we need to do is make sure that we're being consistent in how we approach the same types of files. Further clarify and document real estate commission and OPLC roles and responsibilities. This is certainly ongoing through our reorganization. I think also this legislative session, I'm hoping will help clarify the difference in the two roles. I think that there is not yet a consensus in the state about what the purpose of the OPLC is versus the boards. And certainly the reorganization and having streamlined policies and procedures are going to assist with better defining those roles. And establishing a performance measurement system, that's something that we're working with now as we develop our strategic planning going forward. So I think the budget does accurately reflect, or it does intend to address all of the findings in the real estate audit, but the other audits as well, which are primarily related to, providing the appropriate administrative support to the boards.
I have one last question for you. As I understand what I read in HB2 about the OPLC, which was a long section, several sections probably, and listening to you today, if you do not get the sections in HB2 related to OPLC, you basically can't manage the budget you've presented here either. They're tied together, as I think I understand what I read and what you've said. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Any other questions from any board member? Representative Leishman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good presentation. But I do have a question on your OPLC position crosswalk. It's one of the documents that we were given.
Yes.
And on, I think it's page 4. It lists the executive director of OPLC twice, and there's 2 salary lines, one for 179,000 and one for 194,000. And I didn't see too many comparisons where jobs were listed twice for the same position, especially like for the executive director twice. You see that on its page
4?
Yeah, the top of page 4.
It's positions 3 and 4 in that document from the top down.
Let me pull it up.
It's the last page of your OPLC position crosswalk.
we go. Sorry, I just have to zoom in and.
In the org chart you presented, it looks like you have an executive director over Division of Health Professions, Technical Professions, and Admin, plus a second executive director over Division of Licensing, Enforcement, and Admin. Do you have
Yes.
two positions?
No, there's one position, and what this represents is the total cost for fiscal year 22 with salary and benefits is 179,000 approximately, and the total cost for fiscal year 23, it goes up obviously with the increase there's an increase in salary and presumably benefits as well.
Yes.
Okay, because there was no indication on here. I thought maybe that was it, but it didn't say, so I was curious.
So I'm happy to walk you through the items in our budget, starting with I finally have the right page that that I was supposed to be on, if that would be helpful to you.
Sure.
Okay.
But you need to give us the page.
Yeah, so I think you were on one.
Last page we looked at was 194 when we were looking at the addition of your positions.
So I'm on page, this says 200.
Madam Chair, this is Mike. I believe the page that OPLC starts on is 186 in the,
Yes, Mike, that's true. By 200, we're in another agency.
Okay. So I'm at the top, general government, professional licensure and certification. We're starting with 2404 administration.
Okay, 2404 is on page 186.
Okay. So class 10, obviously there's an increase basically between 463,000 in fiscal year 21. In fiscal year 22, it goes up to 573,000. That's when the addition of one position reflected. It's the hearing examiner position reflected in the governor's proposed recommended budget. With class 11, there was an increase. Basically, the fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21 did not contemplate my position starting off on the step that I did. And so 22 and 23 represent proposed salary increases for one unclassified position in administration, which is the executive director position. Class 20 current expenses. Let me just switch to a different sheet. Okay. So we have approximately 75,000 in supplies, which is consistent with what FY20 was, which was about $69,000. We have the largest expense is credit card processing services. In FY 2020, it was approximately $150,000 in the governor's recommended budget, and we estimated about $300,000 for credit card processing fees based on the number of credit card transactions that we anticipate capturing through our online licensing. That also includes about $100,000 in postage, which is consistent with what we spent in FY 2020, which is $97,000, and a couple of other smaller line items. Class 22 is new. It's fairly new for us this year, at least in the large amounts. Previously, I think we had some storage expenses in class 20 and class 21, or I'm sorry, in fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21. We did have to physically relocate to a non-state building back in July. and 393,000 is our anticipated costs for rents to leases other than states. Organizational dues, you'll see that class 26 previously had 0, but that is just for administration only. Across the agency, we actually had spent $62,314 in fiscal year 20, and we're authorized to spend $82,292. And so we've moved all expenses over to administration. And so the FY 2022 and FY 2023 really line up with our adjusted authorization for 21, and that it's $87,000. Our organizational dues are historically statutorily required for us to participate in. Oftentimes our organizations like National Council for State Boards of Nursing or the real estate organization provide a vital examination or exams or that sort of activity for us. So we're historically required to participate in them as a matter of statute. So class 27 is, that is a large increase, transfers to OIT, $473,000 in fiscal year 2020. We're up additional authorization in 2021, 718. But obviously the governor's recommended budget includes a recommended appropriation of $1.2 million in fiscal year 22 and $1,066,000 in fiscal year 2023. And that really, the breakdown is based on shared costs from DOIT, as well as upgrades, as well as the cost of our 2 IT consultants. Additionally, and I know Commissioner Goulet has gone over this, our board members do not have state issued email addresses, which really poses a problem from a 91A standpoint. And so they've made some recommendations for technology for that. And then finally, our additional prioritized needs regarding the inspection software and the investigation software and the document management system. So that's essentially a one-time initial fee in fiscal year 22 and 23. Transfers to general services, class 28. Although this states that in admin, it was $25,000. If we're going on agency-wide, we really spent in fiscal year 2020 $267,000, and in fiscal year 2021 we were authorized $264,000. This was our rent for the Philbrook building, which was owned by the state, but obviously we paid a DAS. We have the governor has recommended that we have an appropriation of about $4,300. We are still renting some storage space in the Walker building, so that's intended to capture that. Our class 30. So this shows that we previously had $0 in admin. We did have about $12,000 that we spent in 2020 in other divisions, and $17,000 is authorized in 2021. This is really for vehicle replacement. We have a number of vehicles for our inspectors that are about ready to die and need to be replaced. And so that's where that $50,000 comes into play. Our class 38, technology and software. So generally, so that's intended to allow us to have Adobe Pro software. So in fiscal year 2020, we spent about $2,200 in that. We are authorized $11,000. I'm not sure why of the significant jump in fiscal year 2021. We've estimated that we need another $3,000 to keep renewing that subscription of Adobe Pro, which in this electronic age is really necessary for us to be able to edit documents. Class 39, telecommunications. For admin in 2020, obviously we spent $4,800. Agency-wide, we spent about $51,000. In fiscal year 2021 for admin, we are authorized $4,800, but we are agency-wide authorized $53,484. So the increase is really just intended to capture additional positions and obviously the increase in cost. So we've estimated $64,500 for telecom across 22 and 23. Our indirect costs, interestingly, so this previously captured both our self-billing as well as SWICAP. Starting in 22 and 23, it's only going to capture SWICAP and not our self-billing. So class 40 for admin, 181,000, actually was significantly more than that. When we look at agency-wide, class 40 was agency-wide class 40 was $2,471,000 in fiscal year 20, and in fiscal year 2021, $4,443,000. But again, that includes our self-billing. So one of the other reasons why we want to do away with the self-billing is that it's not transparent as to how much you're actually spending. So obviously the recommended or what they've estimated our SWICAP to be for fiscal year 22 and 23 is, $1,131,000. Class 46 is our consultants. Again, it shows that we didn't have any payments out of this in administration, but agency-wide in fiscal year 20, we had 51,580. In fiscal year 21, we're authorized 71,452. We're statutorily required to contract with a physician investigator for the board of medicine mainly. And at present, that costs us $55,000 annually. We also have a contract with a dental hygienist to conduct inspections and investigations when needed. And that contract is not anticipated to exceed $10,000. So that's intended to capture that. Class 49 transfers to other state agencies. This would really be our DOJ support, our Department of Justice support. So while we didn't have any allocated or spent any in administration in fiscal year 20, we did agency-wide $678,000. In fiscal year 2021, we appropriated $690,000. And these numbers for 2022 and 2023, I believe, are based on DOJ's recommendations. Class 50, you'll see that our temporary, our class 50 positions in FY 2020 in admin, we had 31,000. But agency-wide, we had approximately 520,000. In FY 2021, we had agency-wide $453,000 appropriated. And we are anticipating to significantly reduce that agency-wide to $156,000 in fiscal year 2022 and $162,000 in fiscal year 2023. Class 57, in admin, we didn't have any money, any funding spent out of this in administration, but we did spend about $2,000 in fiscal year 2020, and we had $3,000 appropriated in fiscal year 21. This is really where required, our electricians, our electrical inspectors are required to keep inspection manuals so that they have the updated codes. So we need a small amount of appropriations to make sure that we have access to those materials. Obviously, class 60 benefits, class 61, 62, we don't control that, 64. 65 are board expenses. So we did not pay any board expenses out of class 65 in administration in 20 or 21. However, we are moving all expenses to, or proposing to move all expenses to administration. So in fiscal year 2020, we spent $134,000 out of class 65 across the agency, and $144,000 is authorized in 2021. We are proposing an increase as recommended through the governor's budget to $208,000. And this really captures our per diems for our board members. One of the issues that we're trying to address in legislation this year is to allow OPLC to adopt or to promulgate rules regarding per diems across all boards. Right now, the majority of health boards, the large majority of health boards receive a per diem, but it varies between $25 and $100. It also varies depending, a certain amount of work needs to be performed, that varies. The majority of our technical boards do not receive a per diem. So we want to make sure that we're being consistent and the work that's being performed. and also so that OPLC can effectively budget. We do have issues right now with, with being able to project how much we're going to be spending in per diems, particularly for those boards that receive payment for any work performed that's board related. It's hard to know how much you're going to spend. So we are projecting a slight increase for that. Class 70 in-state travel reimbursement. Obviously for fiscal year 20, we spent $607 in admin, but agency-wide, we spent $70,439. And fiscal year 2021, we're authorized $124,275 agency-wide. And agency-wide, we are projecting through the governor's recommended budget a need for $47,000 for fiscal year 22 and 23. Class 27 really goes to our mileage reimbursements for our board members that we're statutorily required to provide. We are anticipating a decrease in 22 and 23, assuming that some continuation of remote meetings is possible. But obviously, if it's not possible, those numbers may need to be adjusted to better align with FY 2020. In terms of out-of-state travel, we have very limited out-of-state travel. All of our out-of-state travel is paid by the various conferences that we have to attend through the professional association. So NCSBN, for example, the National Council of State Boards of Nursing, will pay for a board member and or staff member to go to their annual meeting. So sometimes our staff members and our board members attend out-of-state travel. I don't anticipate any of that this year because all of our meetings are being held virtually, but perhaps in fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 2023. We are eliminating class 89 transfers to DAS maintenance fund because we're no longer being maintained by DAS. And 531, I'll skip over 211 because that has to do with our property and casualty insurance. 531 has to do with our professional health program, which we contract with New Hampshire PHP in order to provide these services in terms of monitoring and for 13 of our boards. As part of the contract, though, we are able to add on additional boards at a cost of $8 per licensee. And OPLC is effectively able to promulgate, we're seeking legislation to allow us to promulgate rules to adopt fees to basically get the cost of that covered by licensing fees. We'd like as many boards to be able to participate in this PHP program as possible, but we are anticipating that the 13 boards will remain at least for fiscal year 2022 at a cost of $542,000. Does anybody have any questions on that?
I don't see any, Lindsay.
Okay. So moving on to the next page, our OCC license review and reform. That was our project. We were funded, we received grant funds through the Department of Labor. We contracted with CLEAR, the Council of Licensing and Enforcement and Regulation, to provide an analysis regarding certain entry-level professions, as well as the Office of Professional Licensure. And we did have a part-time position funded that we have eliminated, and we don't expect that grant work will be completed by sometime in April of this year. So so we will be eliminating that accounting unit. So in terms of the expenditure total for Division of Administration, you'll see that we had in fiscal year 2020, $2,216,000. Fiscal year 2021, $3,460,000. That's increased to $6,436,000 in 22 and $6,370,000. But that again, that is basically putting all of our expenses, agency expenses, into a Division of Administration, with the exception of class 10, class 50, and I think class 60. So we will have We currently have 9 positions in the Division of Administration, and under the governor's recommended budget, we will have 11 positions in the administration. We can move on to technical, although technical is being eliminated.
We
under-
actually have 3 pages of 0, and that's due to your reorganization, right?
Okay, that's great. Excuse me one moment, Madam Chair. I have to plug in my computer because it's about to die. Should have done this.
You gotta
first.
love technology.
Yeah. Much rather be in person. So we're proposing to eliminate the Division of Technical Professions. And then we're proposing to eliminate the Division of Health Professions. And then we are proposing to create the Division of Licensing and Board Administration so that we can continue to streamline all of our licensing functions. And you'll see in this division that the only classes that we have are class 10, 18, and 50. And so 10, obviously class 10 has to do with our permanent classified employees. And you'll see that those employees are set forth in the crosswalk, but primarily our licensing folks and our board administrators. We are not projecting much overtime, but the 2010 that we are projecting was a carryover from, I believe it was the Division of Health Professions. That's what we've historically had allocated to us or appropriated in terms of overtime. Often our inspectors will be called on to receive overtime because inspections can sometimes last longer than one anticipates. So we've left that in there, and our class 50 is obviously significantly reduced to 64,000 and 66,000 in the governor's recommended 22 and 23 budget. We are projecting 40 permanent classified positions in licensing and board administration, as well as class 60 benefits, $1.1 million and $1.2 million. So then the next division that we're creating or proposing to create is the Division of Enforcement. And again, this includes class 10, 18, 50, and 60. And in class 10, we have $1.9 million or almost $2 million. And in fiscal year 23, $2,116,000. We do have more overtime allocated in this budget. Again, this goes to our inspectors, particularly with the addition of the 6 inspectors for mechanical licensing. We don't always use it, but sometimes our inspectors have to work overtime with some of the inspections that they're doing and investigations. And then again, our class 50 is significantly reduced to 68,000 in fiscal year 22 and 71,000 in fiscal year 23. And then of course our benefits, $1.1 million and 1.2. And we are anticipating 32 positions in this enforcement unit or enforcement division under the governor's recommended budget. Does anybody have any questions on that?
How do your boards feel with this reorganization? Are they in favor?
I think the majority are at this point. I think that the boards have been hesitant to be accepting initially because we've had so many issues with the agency, as you're aware. And, you know, they wanted to make sure that this was actually going to benefit them. But we've certainly been working with them, particularly with providing enforcement support. And they are really on board with that and really supportive of those directions that they haven't previously had that support. Joe, do you have anything that you'd like to add? Because you have a lot of interaction with the boards as well.
No, I think you captured it well. I think the board's concerns are, that there's they call it an overreach, if you will. And we clarify to them that we're not taking the scope of practice from them. But people get the two intertwined sometimes. So the boards that, have expressed concerns, that's what it's around. And we quickly come back to them and explain that, we're not trying to get into your scope of practice at all. But there's no question when you say the majority, out of the 50, plus boards, you're talking a handful that really have expressed concerns. High 40s are completely on board, in my opinion.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So
Representative Leishman has a question.
So on another one of your handouts that I was looking at, the crosswalk versus the new accounting units,
yes,
there's a line as far as credit card processing fees, which shows a fairly steep increase. Do you charge people when they use their credit cards? Like the Secretary of State charges a small fee to cover the cost versus the state having to pay the cost?
that's a very good question. We don't presently charge, but we do have a proposed rule in the works, and we did file an initial proposal so that we could shift the cost. We do have that authority under state law. There's a statute that allows us to do that. And that is our proposal, that we would charge, because of technology, it's a little bit difficult to do so, but our proposal right now is to charge an additional $2.50 to assist with covering the cost of the credit card fees. But obviously, depending on the fee, that $2.50 may not be 2.3%. And I don't know where that rule will go. But our goal would be to try to shift that back on the licensee to some extent so that the state is not paying the cost.
And one further question, if I
Follow
could,
up.
Madam Chair. Also on that same page, rent to owners of non-state facilities or buildings presently is 0, and you're going up to $367,000. You couldn't find anything with DAS? No available state space?
No, we got a call in June. I got a call in June 1st, essentially, from Jane Millerick saying we needed to move July 1 because HHS needed our building. And there was no state space available for an agency of our size. And there were 4 agencies in that building, and I think they were able to find state space for others, but not for us.
Okay, thanks, Madam Chair.
Representative Walsh, you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I want to go back to the topic we were discussing before Representative Leishman's questions. And that is, at the time DOIS was created, I was hearing concerns from the staff, not from the boards, but from the staff to the boards, that by centralizing this and centralizing the personnel, that they would not have the same expertise as each board's personnel individually had. So, you know, the plumbing board, they knew plumbing, the nursing board, they knew nursing, whatever. And when you have a person handling multiple boards, they don't necessarily have the same expertise in all those fields. And I'm wondering if you're hearing those concerns now.
We're not hearing those concerns at the moment from staff. What our staff are expressing is that we don't have sufficient number of individuals to assist. And that's one of the reasons why we've proposed adding on 4 additional board administrators. I know that historically the staff have, when the staff came on board, they didn't necessarily come on willingly. When the boards came on board, they didn't really come in willingly. I think that's, and so a lot of our staff were really tied into their boards, and that was great, but we had to work through some of those issues. From our perspective, you don't necessarily need to know the profession. That's why we rely on the board members, but the process should be very similar. Certainly it's helpful if you understand medicine, but you don't need to be a doctor in order to assist the Board of Medicine. And the same is true for the Board of Dental Examiners. And by making the processes the same and efficient, we should be able to effectively provide that support to more than one board. That said, we do need additional support in order to be able to do that.
Thank you. Whoops.
I don't see any other questions. Do we have any questions?
I have one, Madam Chair, just a comment.
Representative Hatch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry to ask. Just as a note, Lindsay, I just want to thank you for your presentation. And just from my perspective, the board has been, the administration of the board has been a concern in the past, but I think there's a lot of improvement that has taken place. And I think it comes from the top, and I just want to thank you. That's all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative. I appreciate that.
I think it's like any other situation. It takes a while. This originally was an idea that then Governor Hassan had that put things together. And I think we're finally seeing the fruition of some of those synergies that she hoped to see. And it just takes a while to get everything to gel, and it looks like things are moving along.
Yes, I will say that the energy in the building from our staff is very positive. We've done a complete 180. People are excited about what we're doing, and we're really excited about being able to move this agency in a positive direction. And I really think in 5 years, New Hampshire can be on the cutting edge of occupational licensing and looking at other opportunities and ways that we can, bring people in and make sure that we're adequately protecting the public, but also thinking outside the box, looking at veterans and how we bring them into the state. And we're all very excited about that.
Any last questions from the division? Lindsay, I really like to thank you because we looked at HB2 and that lengthy situation with OPLC. You've pulled it together very nicely for us as how HB1 and HB2 tie together. So I appreciate the time you took making that very clear for us. And I appreciate you and your staff being with us this morning. Thank you for coming.
No, thank you for having us. Pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
The division is going to be in recess until 1 o'clock. So I suggest we all turn off our pictures. I believe it's what is known as lunchtime.
Representative Over, this is Mike. Can you hear me?